Anyone? Anyone wants to ask? Yes, sister, go ahead. Amen. So it came by visions and dreams, and I was 18 years old back then. I was going through a lot, so that's a good question. And just like a lot of Muslims around the world, right, God imparts visions and dreams to them. And so I remember early on in my youth, I was starting to see, visions and dreams, but it became a little bit more vivid when I turned 18. And so I saw Jesus in my dream, and it was 12 dreams in a row, one day after the other. And I was someone who was very disturbed, very broken, because I had, had grown up without a father, and someone had actually taken over as a father figure in our family, and that person was ruthless with us. He was a radical Muslim back then, and so I wanted to take my life away. And my mom would find me sometimes, on the balcony from the ninth floor. I wanted to jump off. I was a very angry kid. I was growing in Islam, and I remember, at some point, and this is really, this is gore, but I gotta say, just for the sake of, I guess, like the testimony, because it's powerful. All of us have, powerful testimonies. But I lost a friend that had his throat slit open by a Salafist, and that person was actually his brother, his older brother. And so that's when, everything actually took a turn for the worse, and I started questioning my own religion, right? And before I knew it, I was in the book, I was reading the Bible, and I thought that God had called me to be a Jew first, because I was seeing myself as a rabbi, in every dream, and that was really weird. I don't know why. But at some point, I was actually knocking every Jewish synagogue around, the Montreal area, and they were rejecting me, like plain and simple, like, what's going on up there, man? Don't you see what's going on in Palestine? Don't you see the conflict? Don't you see the hatefulness, all that stuff? And in fact, they actually called the cops at some point. They called the cops on me, so I had to actually run away. And then I figured, okay, well, God must be calling me, into something else, because had it been Judaism, then, I'd be a Jew by now, right? And I wasn't. By then, so I figured, okay, something must be wrong here. And so God allowed, a series of dreams where I saw Jesus coming to me, and I was so broken, I didn't have peace in my heart, and every time, just long story short, and I know I was actually speaking to you first, so why am I going there? All right, so I was sister, yeah, so Jesus came to me. I had an out-of-body experience. I was 18, and Jesus came to me, and I saw him, and it was just so beautiful, because I knew I was actually in the presence of the King. I didn't know who Jesus was at that time, but all I knew is that figure that was there and was talking to me was certainly not just a random prophet. He was not someone that came out of Islam or whatever, belief system I had back then. And so Jesus came to me in that peace that I was longing for. In my dream, I remember him, and I had experienced the most beautiful, amazing, unconditional and unfailing love that I could ever experience. When he touched me, he spoke to me and said, son, you were seeking for peace all this time, right? And here I am, right? You can receive my peace. And then through various dreams afterwards, Jesus was always coming to me again and again and again. I fell back in the world, drug abuse, alcohol, beating people, beating even women, beating my mom, my sisters. I was really angry. And I was not, the cool guy you would want to hang out with. But fast forwarding, 10 years later, I met a girl, and some of you guys who attended Emmanuel back then, you knew about her, right? So I'm not going to disclose her name just for the sake of privacy. But anyways, long story short, these same dreams that I had, right? Because she told me she wanted to get baptized at this point when I met her, all right? So this is the short version of my testimony. I met her, I got to know her. She was a Catholic, and she said, listen, there's a friend of mine, she's a Latina, she's on fire for the Lord. You know how Latinos are always on fire for the Lord, they're always fired up, right? And they're the loudest people in the room usually, and we love that. Anyway, so, and no disrespect there, by the way. So what happened is, she came up to me and she said, I want to get baptized because my friend told me that from Scripture, apparently if you get dipped in the water, you'll be saved immediately. And I said, there's absolutely no way that, and I didn't know anything about Christianity, mind you, but I just found it a little bit far-fetched, right? Getting dipped in the waters of baptism and then you come out like completely saved, right? I was like, what? Nothing else, right? And so she really wanted me to be there at her baptism. I remember that night, there was a night, there was this youth conference that was going on. It was a Friday night, and it was in a basement. I walked in, and I was going there because I wanted to confront the pastor and everybody else and say, what's going on? Like, why are you guys brainwashing my girlfriend? There's no way that she would ever become a Christian. There's no way my kids would be raised to become, Christians. And so as I actually walked into that room, that pastor was there, and I have the almost love for this guy, but, this guy turned out to be a false prophet, but, God still used him back then. And long story short, he was there up front, and he was preaching, and he was prophesying over someone in that room that had gone through so much persecution and suffering, so much that person was broken and was suicidal and had evil thoughts. And he literally said exactly what I had gone through. And at this point, I'm like thinking to myself, how is this even possible? Like, this guy is speaking over my life. He's speaking my life, right? And then he put Matthew 11:28, right, on the screen. And he said, listen, if you're broken, whoever that person is, if you're broken, if you're hurt, if you're looking for peace, because I was always seeking for peace. And Jesus came in my dream. He said, if you want peace, come to me, right? He said, so you start reading off of the screen, Matthew 11:28, and real quick, that became my favorite verse. But I remember something actually hit me in the head, and I just fell on my knees, and I started crying out to God and saying, Lord, that is me. And I couldn't hold myself back. I was bawling. And everybody was like, who's that guy? And I couldn't care less about what people thought, because I was in a miserable state, man. I was suicidal. I was just going to, end my life. And so that was the beginning of many more dreams. And it's interesting because these dreams that I dreamt later were the same dreams that Jesus gave me when I was 18. It's like Jesus was reiterating once again, right? This is me once again trying to extend my arm to you and coming to you. Place your trust in me, and you shall be saved. And everyone who believes upon, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved.